Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. It's a statement that almost guaranteed to come up during any conversation about race. Someone will say, I don't talk about race because I'm afraid of saying the wrong thing. Is that you? Truth be told, it probably applies to all of us because we've all said something racial that was the wrong thing to say. Up next on Another View, we talk with professor, author, and sociologist Dr. Crystal Fleming, whose upcoming book, How to Be Less Stupid About Race, will help us navigate race and its ramifications. But first, you know what time it is. It's time for you to support what you love, which we hope is Another View. Let's head over to Pledge Central with Sandra Woodward and Dan Cawley.
Hello.
Hey.
Good afternoon.
How are you, Sandra?
We are, we're great. Aren't we, Dan? Are we good?
I'm ready to learn how to be less stupid, period. But I need the book to stop there and just help me out overall. So I'm very excited about the next hour. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Oh, Dan, we know how smart you are, actually. But guess what, you guys? We have a $2,000 challenge
Excellent.
in this hour. So which means that if we raise $2,000 between now and 1 o'clock, that we will get $4,000. So
double your money, double your fun.
Absolutely.
1-800-940-7170.
Thank you for that
call. And there's that first fan of Another View right there calling in.
Fantastic. Thank you.
It is pet. There's so many reasons I'm just kind of overwhelmed with it here. We've got that that $2,000 challenge. It is Pet Pledge Friday. It's the final hours of our spring membership drive. I've got Dan Cawley here with me. I've
Hello.
got Barbara Ham-Lee here. I mean, this is just like, I can't think of, there's so many reasons to call 1-800-940-7170 that if you haven't done it yet, if that's you, as Barbara was saying earlier, is that you we're talking to right now? The person who has not made that call of support, that has not become a member, that has not supported Another View, now is the time to make that pledge.
Absolutely. And I have another reason why they can make that pledge, too.
I don't know if I can handle another one. Let me sit down.
One. Are you ready for this?
Bring it on.
It's the Another View mug. Now.
What?
Now.
I work here. I didn't know about this. What?
It is a beautiful navy blue mug with Another View in a light gray. It's gorgeous. And for $5 a month as a sustainer or a one-time gift of $60, it is yours, the Another View mug. So be sure to call in, support Another View, support what you love. Lisa and Victor and I truly appreciate it.
You know, that might not be a bad way to start out. If you're someone that you find yourself here every Friday afternoon, this is part of your Friday, appointment listening, as we like to call in the biz, and you've never made that leap from being the appointment listener to being the appointment member, why not try that out there at $60?
Yeah,
and get the mug to go with it.
I love the idea of Another View mug. I'm assuming it has a picture on both sides, so you can turn it and then you get
another view.
Another view. Thank you. I'm here all week.
All right,
there we go.
I think we're done here.
Thank you. Since it's the last day of the drive, I'm here all week.
1-800-940-7170, and really try out at that one-time $60, $5 a month, and the sustainer thing. Maybe if you already are a member.
How does sustainer work? Tell me about it.
It's kind of like those other things, like we joke, the gym membership that you don't use, and it comes out of your credit card or your checking account or whatever you deem appropriate. We do the same thing here. You can be a sustainer of what you're listening to. It's very convenient.
It's
don't
very
have to think about it. You can listen to these pledge drives and laugh with glee because I don't have to make a pledge. I already do it every month.
Absolutely.
And let's remember what the pledge is for, because this is the time. And I'm a volunteer. I'm a member, and I'm pleased to be here to support this program and this station, because this is the type of discussion you're not going to find anywhere else. This is the kind of conversation. This is the kind of real...
fearless.
Absolutely. Fearless discussion you're not going to find anywhere else on the dial. I challenge you to do that. Well, don't actually do it. Just stay where you are.
Stay with me. That's right.
Absolutely. And this is your opportunity to invest in it. This is your opportunity to say, I want to make sure that this continues. So get on the phone, join me as a member, and I guarantee you will listen differently. You listen a little more actively. You pay more attention because you're a part of it. You're a piece of it. You're in the group. You're in the club. So give us a call right now. 1-800-940-7170. You can call during the segment if you want to, but we prefer you to do it now so that you can finish it up in 90 seconds. And then thank you
learn
for
how
that
to get
ping.
smarter. We're all going to learn how to get smarter.
Or go to whrv.org and make it ping like that. Make your contribution and then pay attention to Another View. So give us a call right now.
And you know what else makes it really, really special is that
there's more?
We're only going to give out, since you guys are using the 800 number in pledge,
yes,
then we will use a local number in the show today so that people don't get confused and they can still call in and participate. So we will be giving out that number, but for right now, that 800 number is really, really important. 1-800-940-7170. That's the number you call to make your pledge of support for Another View. Show everyone that you care about this show, that the show is important to you. Become a member, and we really would appreciate it.
1-800-940-7170 is the way to make the phones ring, to make that little ping noise, WHRV.org.
Thank you for the calls.
We just want to hear for you. We want to hear from you. Support what you love. If you love Another View, support it. Let us hear from you. Thank you.
Discussing today's topics from an African American perspective. This is Another View.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. Let me start by thanking all of you who have become members of WHRV-FM. Welcome to the family. If you haven't become a member yet and you listen to and love Another View, then support what you love and become a member right now. The phone lines are open, 1-800-940-7170. That's the number to call to make your pledge of support. Now, we have a $2,000 challenge, which means if we raise $2,000 during this hour, it will be matched and turned into $4,000. And Lisa, Victor, and I appreciate your support. And let me also say very quickly, congratulations again to the Newport News Neighborhood Series, Leadership Series graduates from last night. Delsino Miles and myself had the pleasure and the honor of serving as instructors for their leadership class. And these are people who live in the East End of Newport News. They are community-minded. They are community leaders. They are ready to make a change and make a difference in their community. And last night was so inspiring. They presented their projects, and we just want to say congratulations to all of them. And then finally, one last thing. Tomorrow, if you want to come out and share some things with the Islamic Center of Tidewater. They were holding coffee and conversations. Join us for a talk on the legacy of kindness and humanity of the Holy Prophet with Brother Joshua Salam of the Adams Mosque. If you remember one of our Race Let's Talk About It town halls, we had Brother Salam here, and he was very, very good. So if you'd like to come back out and hear him tomorrow from 2 until 5 p.m. at the Islamic Center of Tidewater, that's at 1442 West 49th Street in Norfolk. It is open to everyone. Space is limited, though, and they would like you to RSVP, and you can do that at MRSA Sahar99 at gmail.com. So that's MIRZASAHER99 at gmail.com. She's an award-winning writer, speaker, and educator, and her upcoming book, How to Be Less Stupid About Race, on racism, white supremacy, and the racial divide, is sure to cause many conversations about what is one of the most contentious issues in our society today. Dr. Crystal Fleming teaches sociology and Africana studies at SUNY Stony Brook, and we are happy to have her as our guest today on Another View. Welcome, Dr. Fleming. How are you?
Hi, Barbara. I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I am so excited. And let me let the audience know right away that you will be here in Virginia Beach at Virginia Wesleyan University this coming Monday, April the 23rd, from 7 to 8 p.m. at the Boyd Dining Center at Virginia Wesleyan University. It's a free talk. It's wide open for everyone. And so if you like what you hear on the show today, we're going to give them a little sneak preview, huh?
Yes. I'm looking forward to coming down to Virginia.
Oh, we are really looking forward to seeing you in person. So your upcoming book, How to Be Less Stupid About Race. First of all, I love the title because it's really catchy.
Thank you.
But the very first thing that came to mind was, for me, as I was preparing for this show, was what happened in Philadelphia a week ago Thursday. And wow, talk about a misstep in terms of race and race relations. I'd love to get your initial reaction when you heard about it.
Yeah, my initial reaction was disgust. Just the headline alone. And then I saw the video of, these heavily armed cops surrounding, these two black men who were doing nothing wrong. And, hearing, other people there, telling them, they did nothing wrong, and really, fearing for their safety. And I saw that there was an interview with the two, I think they're real estate agents, these two Black men, where they said that they, quite obviously were in fear of their lives. And so it was harrowing, to watch that. And I think, for most Black people, it's a familiar form of terror. So I was very, that's just the initial reaction, but at the same time, I also wasn't particularly surprised. I say that because not only because these kinds of things, we have a very long history of systemic racism, so there's that. But specifically for Starbucks, I actually started my book. The opening chapter has a section about Starbucks. This is before this popped off, but a couple of years ago, Starbucks had, I don't know if you remember, but they had a really silly thing. It was called Race Together.
Yes,
and
I do remember that.
Right?
Yeah.
And their bright idea was, let's just, have baristas, randomly write, the words race together on people's coffee cups and, kind of force them to talk about race, And so I actually start the book in part by talking about how stupid that was, and just how it really illustrated that Starbucks, like unfortunately many companies, many institutions, was not at all treating racism as a serious issue, not providing training to their staff. It's not like they, we're going to put the baristas and the staff through, some kind of diversity training so that they would be competent to address race and racism. It was more, let's all have this big ignorant conversation about race. And we don't need that. We do not need, superficial, random conversations about race from people who have received no education on the matter, no preparation, no training from an institution that's, telling them that they need to address it. So, I think Starbucks is closing down, 8,000 of their stores.
Yes, I was going to ask you about that. What do you think about the whole idea of doing the implicit bias training and racism training for their staffs? Is it too little, too late, or is it, or do you really think it'll make a difference?
Well, I think that it should make a difference, but I think we should be a little skeptical about the kind of difference it can make. And I mean, I don't know what the stats are right now for Starbucks leadership, corporate leadership, but when I was writing my book last year and I looked at, their lack of diversity in their C-suite, just in their corporate leadership, is almost entirely white.
I believe the COO now is African-American, if I'm not mistaken.
That's
female.
Improvement.
Yeah.
That's improvement. I mean,
think she's the COO, yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So, I think that's a shift in the right direction. Nonetheless, unfortunately what we see is a lot of organizations, they make a hire of a non-white person and then, they say, our work here is done.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad to hear that a Black woman is in that position, but that doesn't change that for, the entirety of their history, their corporate leadership has been dominated by white people and specifically white men. And so I would think that whatever, diversity training they need to do, they need to start from the top down, right? Mm-hmm. So they need to be asking questions about, why is our leadership so white? Why is it that we thought it was a good idea, just a couple of years ago to send out people to just talk about race with no training? And then I also saw an op-ed about this. I think it was in The Guardian, where the writer was saying, I think these stores are going to be shut down in May to address implicit bias. But the problem with that is what happens in Philadelphia, that's not implicit. That's explicit. That was very specific, discriminatory, racist behavior, and there's nothing implicit about that. So, as an educator, when I teach race courses or give talks about race, I almost always talk about implicit bias because it's a very important, source of discrimination and prejudice for people to be aware of. But that's not the whole story. So whatever Starbucks is doing or any other kind of organization that wants to address racism, or other forms of discrimination, you can't stop at implicit bias, right? You have to connect that to training employees and others about how to avoid but also address instances of overt discrimination and really educate them about systemic racism, right? It's not just about your individual attitudes. It's also about, how resources are structurally channeled to, in our case, the majority population in the United States, that's white folks, and deprived from people of color. And that is happening not just in certain spheres or certain businesses or certain parts of society. It's across the whole thing. And so, yeah.
First of all, her name is Rosalind Brewer, the COO.
Okay.
She's the former president and CEO of Sam's Club, and she's a Spelman graduate.
Oh.
Just FYI.
Okay. Nice.
But when I hear about all of these things that have been happening, I mean, when you go back to Tavon Martin and come forward, even though many, many things happened even prior to Tavon Martin, but why now? What do you think is the cause that all of this racial animosity, this whole issue that we're having with dealing with race, particularly between blacks and whites, why is that so prevalent now?
Well, I have a few reactions to that. I mean, on the one hand, I think, we have had racial discrimination, violence, conflict as a constant throughout our history. There's never been a period where, everything's fine, or, but there have been variations in media attention and also the kinds of, forms of communication that are possible to bring attention to the issues. And certainly there have also been variations on, movements, whether we see people marching or not, even though, again, all throughout our history, there have been ongoing mobilizations, even if they're not appearing on your, evening news.
Right.
So, but I do think there are a few things that, have happened over the last really decade that are, they're unique in our history. And so one is the proliferation of social media and new media technologies that allow people to video, live stream, acts of racism. And, by doing that, gain, worldwide attention. And so I think we see this going back to the Starbucks, right? I'm not sure that's the first time something like that happened in a Starbucks. It might well have been, but it might also be that this is the first time there was video of it, right?
Yeah.
This is the first time that, and not just one video, I think multiple people videotaped what happened. And the speed with which we're now able to not just record something, but then, put it on the internet and it can go viral across the world. I think without that media technology and that communication technology, we would certainly not have seen such a swift response from Starbucks. I think that has really been, something unique and new that's developed over the last 10 years, especially. And then on top of that, and almost concurrently, I do think that there is an Obama effect. And I have a lot to say about Barack Obama in my book. We can get to that if you want later. But other, folks have written, Keeanga-Yamahtta Taylor, and among others have written about, new mobilizations and Ferguson protests and Black Lives Matter in the context of a Black presidency. And, also the failure of former President Barack Obama to actually address, certain aspects of racism, even as he was being, criticized by, folks on the right for, the few things he did say about racism. So like you mentioned Trayvon when
when he said that could have been his son.
Right. That could have been his son. And that was interpreted by many white people, particularly on the right, but not only on the right, as, almost a kind of betrayal, right? I mean, I believe his poll numbers went down as a result of, what really is a pretty minor comment. And I say minor in the context of, the fact that Barack Obama was not someone who overtly criticized white supremacy. He never has been. In fact, in, preparing his presidential campaign, he made it very clear that he didn't believe that systemic racism or white supremacy is endemic to our country, right? This is someone who became very invested in a much more optimistic racial portrait, and one that kind of downplays white supremacy and the persistence of white supremacy. But anyway, I think that nonetheless, there was a sense under his presidency that particularly perhaps younger Black folks felt emboldened to protest, to stand up, to bring attention to anti-Blackness and white supremacy in a way that we haven't seen in a generation. So, that's part of what comes to mind. We have the confluence of, new communication technologies that have allowed people to, create a record of what's happening and share it worldwide. And then also, this shift in the political context where we had a Black president that was completely unprecedented, and that had consequences for the ways that people felt empowered to mobilize, to protest, but then also had consequences for, as we've seen, white backlash, to both of those things, to the Black presidency and to new Black mobilization.
And then also when you have the current president in office and he says things like there are good people on both sides of the Charlottesville riots and so forth, that feeds into that also. 440-2665 is the number to call to join our conversation. We're talking about how to be less stupid about race with Dr. Crystal Fleming, who is the author of this upcoming book. It'll be out this fall. 440-2665. So, Crystal, let me ask you a question. If you had to pick one stupid thing that the majority of us would do about race, what would it be and why?
Oh, God, just one thing. One of the
I know we do many, but...
Yeah, but, that was like the toughest part of this book because it was like, okay, you can't put all the racial stupidity in one book, right? It would be, an endless series, actually. I just could have kept going and going and going. But I think, unfortunately, it's very, very common for people to think that racism means individual prejudice. Right, so the very individual understanding of racism, right? Whether I dislike you on the basis of your skin tone, and if I have a friend or just an acquaintance, not even a close friend, but if I have known someone of a different race, so that means I'm immune to racism. This is especially prevalent among white Americans, but also there are people of color who we have. Folks of color are more likely to understand racism as systemic, but even people of color can sometimes really think about racism initially in terms of individual attitudes. And so I think that just understanding that racism is systemic and really getting specific about what that means, right? Understanding, the scope and depth of the problem of systemic racism, I think would be a huge step forward for us as a society. And, I say that as a sociologist, folks who, for example, might be a psychologist, would maybe be more inclined to focus on things like prejudice. And prejudice is an important part of the story. But we need to understand the systemic context and consequences of racism. We need to think about how economic resources are, limited in very systemic ways to the majority population, how political power comes to be systemically associated with whiteness, and particularly white maleness, right? The dominance of white men in politics, in the economy, in education. And we could go down the line with different institutions in our society that are systemically set up to favor white folks. And unfortunately, our educational system does not prepare young people to understand, to study, to come to terms with this reality. And so a lot of folks end up in my classroom and classrooms around the country where there are teachers and professors doing, work around racism. But they show up with almost no context or knowledge for understanding the history of systemic racism. And so I would say that is maybe one of the most important things to get clear about, that racism is not just about how I feel about you or how someone feels about you, but really it's so much bigger. It's about how our society is structured and has been structured since the beginning.
Since the very beginning. I read in a press release that you, a quote from you that said, in the United States, 75% of whites have no non-white friends. That blew me away. Yeah. 75%. I was amazed at that number.
Did it surprise you, though?
Not really, because if you really live in a society or in an area where you don't, I guess it's something like I say all the time. For white people, if they don't want to, they really cannot have to interact with people of color at all. Exactly. Where people of color have to interact with white people on a daily basis because that's the way the society is set up. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah, so 75% of white Americans do not have
what a shame.
Friends. And, there's even been research that's shown that the few white Americans who say that they have a non-white friend, that unfortunately a number of those people are lying, because when it comes down to the researchers will ask, well, can you name them? And they can't name them because, in fact, they're just thinking of, my buddy at work, and they never actually hang out, or So
they've never had dinner together.
Number.
They never do anything.
Right.
We hold Race Let's Talk About It conversations where we do town halls throughout the Hampton Roads area. And I am constantly encouraging people at the town halls to go out and have dinner with someone who does not look like you. Just try it and see if you can get to a point. Absolutely. Because we got to start, and I get your point about how systemic racism is, but we have to start somewhere. Do we not?
Well, we have to start with ourselves.
Yeah.
Just because racism is systemic and, structured doesn't mean that there's no work to do, at the individual level. But again, to connect to the structure as a sociologist, I really emphasize the importance of not thinking that, you can be an anti-racist just on your own. We always have to think about how we can work with others, to promote anti-racism, to change the racial order. So to your point, yes, it really does matter if you're able to connect with people of a different racial and ethnic background, but not, connecting and socializing. It's an important first step, but then that needs to be built on in terms of actually taking anti-racist action, right? Finding out what's going on in your community, looking at, what are the injustices and inequalities that are right here in my backyard? What are the organizations that are working on it? How can I support them? Because as great as it is for us to, have friendships across difference, we need more than friendships. What we've also seen is that, we can have interracial relationships, friendships, and the persistence of racism.
And it still stays, absolutely. Absolutely. 440-2665 is the number to call. We're going to be talking with Dr. Crystal Fleming through the rest of this hour. But right now, I want to take a quick break. If you're just joining us, we're talking about navigating the issue of race with Dr. Crystal Fleming, author of the upcoming book, How to Be Less Stupid About Race. But we're going to go now to Pledge Central to see how we're doing with our $2,000 match. And Sandra and Dan, how are we doing?
Well, I think we're going to get some figures on that, exactly how we're doing on that $2,000 match right now. I can tell you we are counting down to zero from $37,649.
Fantastic.
So I know we must have gotten a couple calls about that. So we'll try to get a figure for you here shortly. 1-800-940-7170 is the number to call to support what it is that you love, which is Another View. That's why you're listening right now. I'm Sandra Woodward. Dan Cawley is with me. And we have somebody else in here in the studio. I don't know. Maybe I should introduce you, Barbara. His name is Maxie Lee. Do you know him?
I think I know him.
Because you guys kind of have the same last name.
Yes, actually, that happens to be my husband.
I'm not sure his microphone's on. I tell you what. Come stand next to Dan here. And say hello.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
You know each other? I think you probably do.
Have we met?
I think we've met before, Mr. Lee.
Oh, okay.
It was funny, he was saying when he came in.
Mr. Lee, did you hear that? Mr. Lee.
That he wanted to hear the phones ring, and I said, well, the problem is with your show, and it's not a problem, of course, is that people are listening so intently, no one wants to miss a minute of it.
That's true.
And
that
so they don't
very
call.
True.
So this is a great time to call.
So now's the time to call, yes.
1-800-940-7170. We've raised is that right? 1,800? That's what we've raised? 1,837. That's where we are,
Towards
Barbara.
our 2,000?
Yes.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Already.
What great news that is. But why is my husband in there?
I don't know. Why are you here?
Well, let's take you over the top here and let's see if we can match this $2,000. On behalf of the Tidewater chapter of North Carolina A&T Alumni Association, we are giving $200 to Another View.
Yay!
There you go. Nice of you.
Thank you so much to the Tidewater chapter of North Carolina A&T State University and the Spartans on our team. That would be Victor and Lisa. And this Bennett Bell say thank you so very much.
Now you started
Well, I would like to extend a challenge to all the HBCU alumni associations or graduates. Dig deep.
Dig deep.
If you can only pledge $20, call in.
True.
And make sure that you tell the operators here, they're waiting on your calls, that this is for Another View.
Thank you very much.
You're more than welcome.
Appreciate it, Mr. Lee.
1-800-940-7170 is how you can make that pledge of support to Another View. And this is a perfect time to do it right now. So you're not going to miss any conversation at all if you make that pledge right now at 1-800-940-7170. Like Mr. Lee just said, any amount.
And I've got the check. I've got the check
Yeah,
here
he has
from
it,
him.
Barbara. We're good.
He's
Got
not
the
getting
check
out
in
with it.
hand.
I got the check in hand.
That's fantastic. That is so wonderful. And for those of you who have already called in during the show, we so really appreciate it. And we want you to continue to call. If you haven't had a chance to call in yet, now is the time to do it. 1-800-940-7170. Make that pledge of support. Tell them you're calling in support of Another View. We met our $2,000 challenge. Well, that's
I guess so.
awesome.
I guess
that's
we did.
some awesome
But
news.
that doesn't mean
That
people
doesn't mean
should stop calling.
Exactly.
Thank you for that call. Because let's remember, you all are talking about how not to be stupid. And it starts with conversation. And it starts with the kind of conversation you're having right now on Another View. So if you love this program, and you know you do because you're listening, call now and support it. Be a part of it. Thank you for that call.
See,
Let's
Mr.
get
Lee,
back
what
on the
happens?
phones. If you're from one of the HBC, there's another
HBCU.
call. If you're from one of the HBCU schools, mentioned or not, get on the phone, support Another View. 800-940-7170. We still have a few lines open, so call right now.
WHRV.org is how you can make it ping in here as well. Online, just click that support now button. That'll take you to supporting Another View, and you can put that in there on that when you make that pledge that you are supporting Another View. If you find yourself here on Friday afternoons, listening to Another View, you can support that. You can own a little piece of it. You invest in it by becoming a member or renewing your membership, or perhaps becoming a sustainer, where a little bit of money, however much you deem appropriate, comes out of whatever account you deem appropriate every single month. You don't have to worry about renewing. You sustain what it is that you love.
And you listen differently when you're a member. When
Absolutely.
you know you feel invested in the program, and we all should feel invested in the conversation that we're having today. So call now, 800-940-7170. We've got about 30 seconds before we go back to the discussion. WHRV.org. Point, click, and contribute, but call now and support this program.
What it is that you love. If you support it, if you love it, support it. That's what these pledge drives are all about. We are in the final hours of our spring membership drive. If you love Another View, own it up, own it. 1-800-940-7170. All yours, Barbara.
Barbara, I got the check.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate
check.
that. Thank you so much. Absolutely. And we are back here with another view. Thank you to everyone who has given. Thank you to those of you who are calling in right now to make your pledge of support. Crystal, I don't know if you got a chance to hear that, but we had a $2,000 challenge in this hour, and we have met that $2,000, and we're still collecting. So that's a wonderful thing. Absolutely. Let's go to the phones. They're lit up. 440-2665. Tony joins us from Williamsburg. Hi, Tony. You're on the air.
Hi there.
Hi.
So I'm an anthropologist by training, and I'm really interested to know what steps you think we can take culturally to be more intelligent about race. I'm a big fan of celebrating our differences and seeing how they bring us together as people, and I want to know your perspective on that.
Fantastic. Good question. Crystal?
Great question. Well, to go back to what I think is, a really important first step when I was talking about recognizing systemic racism, but then, also starting where you are. There's a really good book that I recommend to everybody, because ever since I read it, I just can't get enough of it because it's so good. But it's called Two-Faced Racism, and it's by a sociologist named Leslie Pica and Joe Fagan. And this book is based on research where they had college students, white college students, keep a journal. And what they would do is that they were just asked to write down any information about racial events that they observed in their lives. And, for some of the classes where the students did this, it was over a course of several weeks. For other students, it was over the course of several months. I mentioned the book because this study shows that a lot of the students, again, mostly white students, who at the beginning of the semester maybe didn't think that race was a very important topic in their lives, not something that was very salient. Maybe many of them thought, I don't see race, I don't see color. After they did this exercise for just a few weeks, they generated collectively over the course of the study thousands of racial incidents that they observed in mostly white settings, amongst their friends, at school, at work, with their family members. And what was so interesting about the study is that the students themselves, many of them admitted that until they did this exercise, they weren't aware of how race was implicated in their lives. So whether it was racial jokes or discriminatory, conversations, or, in some cases, just awkward encounters and not knowing how to, deal with race and their social interactions. They needed an exercise like this to become more aware. So I think one of the things we need to do culturally as a society, particularly white Americans, but not only, but it's just to really start where you are and raise your consciousness and your awareness about how race and racism play out where you live, where you work, where you go to school, and doing something like, it may sound silly, but just, taking notes for yourself of when race comes up, what is said, how is it addressed, and, what your relationship is to that. What are you saying? What are you thinking is a very first step that I think, can get us closer to, more widespread awareness of systemic racism. And it's so important because your question is important because we have so much racial denial still in 2018. There's so much denial about systemic racism, so much denial about what people of color face, denial about white privilege. And, it's going to take all of us starting to tell more truth about the racism that we live with, that we experience, and that some of us reproduce, in order to begin to shift in the right direction.
And to go along kind of with that same thinking, Crystal, a lot of particularly African Americans are accused of relating everything that happens to them to being racially motivated. So, are we overly paranoid, or is that a valid concern?
I think the most valid concern is about the level of denial that white folks have around racism. I think we have study after study that has shown that white Americans chronically underestimate racism. They have no idea how wide the racial wealth gap is, for example. Most people don't know that white families have at least, on average, 13 times the wealth of Black families, and this is only getting worse. So, no, I don't, now, Black folks and other people of color, we have to manage and think about, how much attention we're going to give to race in different aspects of our lives, and manage the stress that comes, with that, because, it's stressful to be aware of how harmful racism is. And yet at the same time, we need to be aware of it in order to navigate it. But so, keeping that, and I think especially for parents, it can be a stressful decision. How much do you share with your children? And when do you share, whatever it is you decide to share with them about racism? You have to, manage that and think about that. But I don't think that, Black folks and other people of color are, inaccurately referencing racism. We live in a society that is systemically structured by white supremacy. And we also live in a society where the powers that be act as though that's not happening, as though, we are in a post-racial moment, or if not post-racial, then things are so much better than they used to be. And there are a lot of metrics that show that things are getting worse or are just as bad as they've been, like I said, with regards to things like the economy. And yes, we had a Black president, but we still have a political system that's dominated by wealthy white men. And so I think that we really have to get real about that and talk more about the racial denial that the majority population, perpetuates. And it's very dangerous. The title of my book is, funny, and there is definitely humor in it. But it's also
very
deadly serious.
Yeah. And I got to bring this up, and I know I'm probably going to hear it. But anyway, one of the things that struck me about the Starbucks incident was the police chief's response. The Philadelphia Police Commissioner, Richard Ross, he, on Saturday, went to Facebook Live and, unequivocally said that his officer did nothing wrong. He kind of bought into the hype. And then he turned around and had to apologize the next day. I want to play two clips real quick, and then we can respond on the other side. So first, this is Saturday when he went on Facebook to talk about his officers.
It is important to emphasize and underscore that these officers had legal standing to make this arrest. Again, they were called to the scene because employees said they were trespassing. It is important for me to say that, in short, these officers did absolutely nothing wrong.
Now, that was on Saturday. Yesterday, he came out with an apology saying that he learned some new things and he may have spoken out of turn.
I can appreciate, in light of the Starbucks policy and how well known it is to many, why these two men were appalled when they were asked to leave. For this reason, I apologize to them.
But what struck me, Crystal, was the whole idea of his, first of all, not even giving the officers or saying that the officers could have had discretion in talking to them or trying to figure out what was going on, without first going straight to the handcuffs. That was number one. And then he made statements about how these gentlemen were talking back and being smart. And nowhere on any tape, nowhere, anywhere in anyone else's description of what happened did that come up. And it really struck me as to why would he be so forceful in his painting them as being wrong.
Yeah, it's
it's a question we have to look at ourselves internally also.
Yeah, it's very irritating, but it's also Yeah, I mean, it's also, though, a very good and vivid illustration of why my book is not only directed to white people.
Right.
My book is directed to everybody because part of what I'm trying to convey is that being socialized in a racist society exposes all of us to racial stupidity. And even if you're a person of color, you can also come to, behave in ways that reproduce racism. And this is this is how power works, right? Members of non-dominant groups can sometimes become implicated in their own domination. And, this police chief is, a modern day version of what we saw back in the 19th century, the 1800s with Booker T. Washington, who was, and I might get it too, people call it about it, but, Booker T. might have had some good ideas, but certainly one of them was not his defense of white supremacy.
Right.
Booker T. Washington was out there, saying that, white people are superior to blacks and, we should not fight for civil rights. We should not fight for, political power. And that was a message that was very comforting to white elites. And there have always, unfortunately, been members of, our own group who have been, implicated in that power dynamic, defending white supremacy more than they will defend Black lives.
Right.
And so, I think, unfortunately, this police chief, it follows in that tradition. And he's not alone. I think that, it's not just, I don't want to, just call him out too, but I also think that any of us who are, working in any kind of institution, we also have to ask ourselves, how much are we willing to defend an institution more than we are willing to, call out its implication of systemic racism? In other words, how willing are we to bump up against the systems where we work and, be very overtly, honest and critical about, the systemic racism that is implicated right where we are. So, I think any of us who care about racism, we need to be willing to speak out about it in ways that, our institutions are not going to like because, institutions prefer happy stories about them, about how diverse they are and how they don't do anything wrong.
Well, and I mean, isn't that really what because President Obama was a first, and I've been in, as I'm sure you have, been in situations where you are a first or an only. So you really do have to navigate. How far am I going to go? Where's my bright line? And, while I know that he took a lot of criticism for not speaking up, and frankly, I hope that he would have spoken up more also. But at the same time, I do recognize that there is that line, and you have to look at your whole life, and take that under consideration. We've got some calls holding. Let's go to Susan in Norfolk. Hi, Susan. You're on the air.
Hi, Barbara.
Hi.
I wanted to say that I think as a white person, it's easy not to deal with the issues of racism when you don't want to. And you might be doing it, or I might be doing it unintentionally even. So in order to really be an active member of dismantling the racism that I object to, I have to take conscious steps. And to me, it is helpful when community leaders or organizations provide the opportunity to meet with people, to interact. We live in segregated and work in segregated situations. So I think that the role of leaders is to bring us together so that we can consciously meet people that are different than us, give opportunities and access to people that are different than us, and start understanding the realities and perspectives and life experiences of people that are different than us in order to really build a stronger community for everyone.
Okay. Susan, thanks so much for the call. I appreciate that. I wonder, though, do you have to wait for community leaders? Can you do that on your own?
I personally do it on my own, but I think that the reason that I say community leaders is have been involved in different conversations where I know that people are interested in doing some. I think that there's a thirst in our country right now for people to do something, but not an understanding of what to do necessarily.
Okay.
That's why I say that.
Okay, let's let Crystal respond. Go ahead, Dr. Fleming.
Oh, yeah, Susan, I think that, you're right in that community leaders can, actively create these opportunities for diverse exchanges. I think, the event at Virginia Wesleyan, hopefully, is something along those lines, right? And I think that they're, the organizers are taking a leadership role in, organizing this event. And so, but yes, at the same time, I do want to go back to what Barbara said, because I think, it's good for community leaders to do that kind of work, but we also need to think of ourselves as community leaders. You are a leader in your household. You are a leader in, wherever you work. You have the capacity also to say, okay, and it sounds like, Susan, that you've been doing that kind of work, but to look at wherever you are and say, all right, what kinds of actions can, we take, and that can I take a leadership role in creating more diverse conversations? How can we bring in experts on racism? How can we bring in people of color and pay them for their labor to improve our awareness and our education around these issues and take concrete steps right where we are? So I think that we all are leaders. We have that capacity, and we have to think about how we can work with others who share values of challenging racism.
Okay. Thank you, Susan, for the call. We appreciate that. And for those of you who may not have heard earlier, Dr. Crystal Fleming will be at Virginia Wesleyan University. The Center for the Study of Religious Freedom is bringing her in how to be less stupid about race, racism, and anti-racism in our classrooms and communities. It's Monday, April the 23rd from 7 to 8 p.m. at the Boyd Dining Center at Virginia Wesleyan University. It is free. It is open to everyone, and come on out and hear her. Let's see if we can get one more call in very quickly. I think we got about 4 minutes left. Alex, you're on the line from Portsmouth. Hi, Alex, you're on the line.
Hello, Ms. Lee. Hello, Dr. Fleming.
Hi.
Love this topic. Can't wait to read your book. Just quick question. There's backlash now about Taylor Swift's cover of September.
From
Is
Earth,
that
Wind,
the
and
black
Fire,
community being stupid about race? Because, there are tweets saying that, white artists stole black artist songs before, and it's black Twitter blew up. So I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
Thanks, Alex, for the call. And Crystal, you want to respond? Are you
know
familiar?
What? I did. I have to confess, I do not follow what Taylor Swift is doing too much. Although I did have my class, my sociology class last week. I had them, try to draw connections between sociological theory and artists of their choice. And I gave them also the option of Cardi B, because everyone's talking about Cardi B. And Taylor Swift was one of them. But I didn't know about this cover of September. But what I can say is, cultural appropriation, it's a legitimate topic of discussion and debate. And I think Taylor Swift is a little, she's been very controversial around, her interaction with Kanye, a few years back, and, situating herself as the victim. And I think that there's a lot that one could say about white privilege in her interactions in that respect. But I don't know about the September thing. But I'll, I get off this interview, I'm going to go to Black Twitter and find out. So thanks for, bringing me into the loop, because I didn't know.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I can't help her out much more either. So on that one. But so in the last 3 minutes that we have left, first of all, when will the book be out?
September 18th, coming out with
September 2018. Okay, so we will be looking forward to that.
It's available for pre-order now, so you can go on and go to Amazon or go to Barnes & Noble and go ahead and pre-order it.
Oh, that's fantastic. Okay, so in the last 2 minutes we have, give us something for each of us to do when we think about race that will help us be less stupid about race.
Oh, gosh. One thing that you could do, today would be, and it's something concrete, would be to, get on Google or, find a directory and look up an anti-racist organization, whether it's something like the Southern Poverty Law Center or other, anti-racist organizations. Project NIA is one that's organized by Miriam Kaba that works around, prison and incarceration and people of color and justice in that arena. But look up an anti-racist organization today and give them money, give them resources, donate, find out how you can be, a regular contributor to an organization that makes it their agenda to address racial justice. That's one thing that everyone can do right now that would have a concrete impact because we don't want to be satisfied with diversifying our lives, although that's really important. We also want to think about resources. How can we shift resources? So support an anti-racist organization. If you are, a member of a community organization yourself or, a business or educational institution, also think about how can we, bring in someone who is a person of color to help our organization address our issues. Those are, I gave you two things that we all can do today.
Thank you so very much. That's Dr. Crystal M. Fleming. She is the author of How to Be Less Stupid About Race, which will be coming out in September, but you can pre-order now. And you can also see her at Virginia Wesleyan University this coming Monday, April the 23rd from 7 to 8 p.m. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll be right back.
I'm with Marcellus, and you all are checking out Another View. Don't go anywhere. Check us out.
And welcome back. I just want to take a moment to say thank you to everyone who has become a member of WHRV in support of Another View. And you know what? We raised we have raised $10,000. $10,000 in this hour. Oh my goodness, I can't even believe it. You guys are just fabulous. Now, Lisa, let me ask you a question. Is this prior to our special gift? That includes our special gift that came from Mary Alice Beal of Franklin, who always gives us a very generous gift. We thank you so very much. $10,000. Thank you to North Carolina A&T State University, the Tidewater chapter, for your donation. Thank you, Mary Alice Beal. Thank you to everyone who has given to Another View. We are so very, very grateful. You can still call 1-800-940-7170. Become a member. Show the folks that you love Another View, and we really appreciate you. And we hope that you enjoyed today's program. You can listen to it again by downloading the Another View podcast at anotherviewradio.org. We're on iTunes or wherever you go for your podcast listening pleasure. Next week on Another View on Health, we tackle the issue of diabetes. Our theme music was composed and performed by Jay Sennett. Our show producer is Lisa Godley. Victor Bowen is our audio engineer, and Alexis Smith answered our phones. There's still time to become a member in support of Another View, so call 1-800-940-7170 right now. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. From all of us here at Another View, thank you so very much for supporting and listening to Another View.